12 interpreters had already failed. The conference room reeked of desperation and collapsing fortunes. 8 international delegates sat rigid in leather chairs, watching hundreds of millions of dollars evaporate with each mistranslation. Security was being called. Contracts were being closed. The CEO's knuckles had gone white against the mahogany table. That's when the janitor knocked, not the executive, not the linguist flown in from Harvard, the man holding a mop. What happened next would shatter every assumption in that room and prove that brilliance doesn't always announce itself with credentials. If you want to see how one invisible man changed everything, stay until the end and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The water in Ethan Cole's bucket had gone cold an hour ago, but he kept wringing the mop anyway. Muscle memory. The rhythmic squeeze and release gave his hands something to do while his mind wandered through conjugations of Mandarin verbs he'd been studying the night before. Wo hui, ni hui, ta hui, I can, you can, he can. The irony wasn't lost on him. 5th floor, executive level. Sterling Global Industries occupied the top 12 floors of the Meridian Tower, a glass monolith that pierced the downtown skyline like a shard of ambition. Ethan had been cleaning these halls for 3 years, long enough to know which executives left coffee rings on their desks, which ones stayed past midnight, and which ones never bothered to learn his name. He was 34 but felt older. Grief had a way of adding years that birthdays couldn't account for. Sarah had been gone for 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Not that he was counting, except he absolutely was. Every morning when he woke up reaching for her side of the bed. Every evening when Lily asked questions only a mother should have to answer. Daddy, why don't other kids have just one parent at pickup? Daddy, do you think Mommy can see me from heaven? Daddy, why do you always look so tired? Because tired was the price of survival. Tired was what happened when you worked the graveyard shift cleaning office buildings, caught 3 hours of sleep, got your daughter to school, then spent your free time taking online language courses and studying from library books because once upon a time you'd been someone different, someone with potential, someone who'd earned a full scholarship to study linguistics at Columbia before life decided to rewrite your story. Ethan pushed his cart past the executive conference room. Through the glass walls, he could see them gathering, the summit. He'd heard whispers about it for weeks, the kind of deal that made or broke companies. Sterling Global was negotiating a massive infrastructure partnership with an international consortium, 8 countries, 8 delegates, billions in potential revenue. Not his world, not his problem. He was just the ghost who made their fingerprints disappear. The door was cracked open. Voices drifted out, clipped, professional, increasingly tense. Ethan's ear caught the shift before his conscious mind registered it. Years of studying phonetics and cultural linguistics had trained him to hear what others missed: tone, inflection, the space between words where meaning actually lived. Something was wrong in there. He slowed his cart, pretending to organize cleaning supplies while his attention sharpened on the conversation bleeding through the doorway. Absolutely unacceptable. A woman's voice cut through in English. Authoritative. Cold. That would be Victoria Langford, CEO. Ethan had seen her exactly twice in 3 years, both times from a distance that made her seem more concept than person. She had a reputation that preceded her like weather. Brilliant, ruthless, utterly uncompromising. A male voice responded in heavily accented English. We have expressed clearly our position. Your company disrespects our terms. That's not what we said, another voice frustrated. The interpreter got it wrong. We're trying to... Wrong again. A different accent. Arabic, Ethan's ear told him. The speaker switched to rapid Arabic, and a nervous interpreter stammered through a translation that made Ethan wince. Oh no, that's not even close. The interpreter had just translated a polite inquiry about timeline flexibility as an accusation of deliberate delay. Ethan could hear it in the original phrasing, the difference between might we consider and you have intentionally stalled. Subtle to someone unfamiliar with regional dialects, catastrophic in a high-stakes negotiation. More voices overlapped. Mandarin, Portuguese, German, French. The room was a babble of frustration, and from what Ethan could hear, the interpreters were drowning. He should keep walking. This wasn't his business. He was the janitor, the invisible man. The single father who needed this job more than he needed to be right about mistranslations happening in rooms he'd never be invited to join. But his feet had stopped moving. Through the glass, he could see them now. 8 delegates around a table designed to seat 12. Victoria Langford at the head, her expression carved from ice. A woman in a headset, the interpreter, looked on the verge of tears. Papers were being shuffled. Folders were being closed. The body language told a story his ears had already translated. This was falling apart. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with damp fingers. Lily, did you remember I'm staying at Jessica's tonight? Her mom is picking us up from school. Right. Friday. He'd nearly forgotten. Jessica's mother, Karen, had offered to take both girls for a sleepover, a mercy Ethan never took for granted. It meant he could work a double shift without worrying about pickup times or homework supervision or whether an 8-year-old should really be microwaving her own dinner. Ethan, remembered, be good, love you, Bug. Lily, love you too, Daddy. He pocketed the phone, looked at his cart, looked at the conference room. 12 more offices to clean before his shift ended. A double meant staying until dawn. Every hour was money. Money was rent. Rent was keeping Lily in a neighborhood with good schools and streets that didn't make him check the locks twice. Keep walking. Inside the conference room, Victoria's voice rose with controlled fury. Get me another interpreter, now. Miss Langford, that was the 12th. Then find a 13th. Ethan's hand tightened on the mop handle. Keep walking. But he thought about Lily's question from last week. Daddy, what do you do at work? I clean buildings, sweetheart. Just clean? Nothing else? Just clean, nothing else. Because that's what you did when life took your wife and your dreams and your Columbia scholarship and replaced them with medical bills and funeral costs and the crushing weight of single parenthood. You survived. You stayed invisible. You didn't make waves. You definitely didn't knock on doors where people whose annual bonuses exceeded your lifetime earnings were losing their minds in 8 different languages. The Mandarin delegate was speaking again, fast, agitated. The interpreter's translation came out mangled, completely missing the cultural context of the phrasing. Ethan heard it clearly. The delegate was expressing respectful disagreement using a formal construction that indicated willingness to compromise, but the interpreter rendered it as stubborn refusal. Victoria's jaw tightened. So you're saying the timeline is non-negotiable? The delegate's eyes widened. No, I am saying... He switched back to Mandarin, frustrated. The interpreter tried again, made it worse. One of the other delegates, German accent, stood abruptly. This is waste of time. We cannot proceed like this. Please. Victoria's composure was fracturing at the edges. Ethan could hear it, the hairline cracks in her voice, desperation wearing the mask of authority. Give us 10 minutes. We'll sort this out. The German delegate checked his watch. 10 minutes. Then I am calling Frankfurt. They filed out, leaving Victoria alone with her crisis. She stood at the head of the table, both palms pressed flat against the mahogany, like she was physically holding the deal together. Her head bowed. For just a moment, the mask slipped entirely, and Ethan saw something he'd never expected to see on Victoria Langford's face. Defeat. She looked up suddenly, directly at the glass, directly at him. Ethan's heart stopped, but her eyes slid past him, through him. She was staring at her own reflection, not at the janitor on the other side of the transparent wall. To her, he simply didn't exist. He'd spent 3 years being invisible. It was supposed to be a blessing. Anonymity meant safety, meant staying off anyone's radar who might ask uncomfortable questions about why a man with a linguistics background was pushing a mop instead of teaching at a university. But standing there, watching a brilliant woman crumble under the weight of mistranslations he could fix, problems he could solve, invisibility suddenly felt like cowardice. This isn't your problem. You have Lily to think about. You can't risk this job. Victoria pulled out her phone, her fingers stabbing at the screen with barely controlled fury. Those delegates are walking away from a deal that could save hundreds of jobs, maybe thousands. Her assistant rushed in, tablet in hand. Miss Langford, I've contacted every agency in the city. No one has anyone available who can handle all 8 languages. The earliest we can get someone is Monday. Monday? Victoria's laugh was sharp enough to cut. Robert, the deal dies in 10 minutes. Monday might as well be never. Not your problem. What about the university? They must have someone. I called them. Their department head is in Europe. Everyone else is teaching or unavailable. Not your problem. Victoria closed her eyes. When she opened them, they'd gone empty. Call the delegates back in. We'll apologize. Reschedule. Try to salvage something. Ms. Langford, just do it, Robert. The assistant left. Victoria sank into her chair, looking smaller than Ethan had ever imagined she could look. She pulled a photo from her desk drawer. Ethan couldn't see what it showed, but he saw her expression soften into something raw and private. Then she set the photo down, straightened her spine, and rebuilt her armor piece by piece. By the time Robert returned with the delegates, Victoria Langford, CEO, was back. Impenetrable. Unreadable. Gentleman, lady, she began in English, I want to apologize for... That's when Ethan knocked. The sound was gentle, almost apologetic. But in the tense silence of that room, it landed like a gunshot. Every head turned. Through the glass door they saw him, a man in a faded gray cleaning uniform with sterling services embroidered over the pocket. Dark hair that needed cutting. 3-day stubble. Work-worn hands still damp from wringing out a mop. A cart full of cleaning supplies behind him like evidence of his station. Victoria's expression shifted through confusion, irritation, and then something approaching rage. We're in the middle of... Ethan opened the door, stepped inside. His heart was hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat, but his voice came out steady. I can help. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Victoria stared at him. Excuse me? With the translation, I can help. Someone laughed, a short, disbelieving bark. The French delegate looked at Victoria like she'd lost her mind. The German delegate was already pulling out his phone. Robert the assistant moved forward. Sir, you need to leave. This is a private... I know what it is. Ethan looked at Victoria. Only at Victoria. You need someone who can interpret between Mandarin, Arabic, Portuguese, German, French, Japanese, Spanish, and English. I can do that. The room had gone completely silent. Victoria studied him with an intensity that felt like being dissected. You're the janitor. Not a question, a statement of fact. I'm Ethan Cole. He met her eyes. And yes, I clean this building. I've also spent the last 3 years studying 8 languages because before my wife died, and I needed a job that offered health insurance and flexible hours, I was a graduate student at Columbia on a full linguistics scholarship. So yes, I'm the janitor. But right now, I'm also the only translator in this building who can save your deal. The words came out harder than he'd intended. 3 years of being invisible, of being overlooked, of being reduced to his worst moment instead of his best potential. It all bled into his voice. Victoria's expression didn't change. Security is on speed dial. I could have you removed from this building and blacklisted from every cleaning contract in the city. You could. Ethan felt surprisingly calm. He'd already crossed the line. Might as well sprint to the other side. Or you could give me 5 minutes to prove I know what I'm talking about. Why would I do that? Because Ethan checked the wall clock. 7 minutes. That German delegate is calling Frankfurt, and this deal is dead. You've burned through 12 interpreters. I watched the last one completely mistranslate a willingness to compromise as stubborn refusal. I heard the Arabic interpreter turn a polite inquiry into an accusation. I can fix this. The question is whether you're desperate enough to let me try. The German delegate surprised everyone by speaking. This is insane. Victoria, you cannot seriously consider... Mr. Weber. Victoria held up one hand, her eyes never leaving Ethan's face. You said 10 minutes. We've used 3. I'd like to use the remaining 7 to see if the janitor knows what he's talking about. She leaned back in her chair. Mr. Cole, was it? Yes, ma'am. You have 5 minutes. Impress me. Ethan's mouth went dry. 5 minutes. He'd just bet everything, his job, his reputation, his daughter's stability, on 5 minutes. He turned to the Mandarin delegate, who was watching with bemused skepticism. In Mandarin, Ethan said, Sir, I apologize for the confusion earlier. When you used the phrase kaneng shuyao kaolu, The interpreter missed the cultural nuance. You were expressing respectful disagreement while indicating openness to finding middle ground. The conditional phrasing showed deference while maintaining your position. It's a face-saving construction that got lost in direct translation. You weren't refusing the timeline. You were diplomatically suggesting flexibility might be needed on both sides. The delegate's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. He responded in rapid Mandarin. Ethan nodded, replying fluently. The delegate's expression transformed, skepticism melting into surprise, then cautious interest. Victoria's voice cut through. What did he say? He said the interpreter completely misrepresented his position. He's willing to discuss timeline adjustments if we're willing to reconsider the payment structure in Phase 2. He used a very specific word, rongtong, which implies negotiation through mutual accommodation rather than confrontation. It's a Confucian concept. The interpreter rendered it as bargaining, which has aggressive connotations in this context. Victoria's eyes narrowed. What else? Ethan turned to the Arabic delegate. In flawless modern standard Arabic, he said, Sir, I believe there was confusion about your question regarding the regulatory timeline. You asked, Mumkin nata awan. Could we cooperate? But the phrasing got translated as though you were questioning our willingness to cooperate, rather than proposing collaboration. The Arabic delegate sat forward, responding with a question that made several others at the table shift uncomfortably. Ethan answered, then switched to English. He wants to know if you understand the difference between the regional dialect variations and why they matter in legal documents. Specifically, he's concerned that contract language might be misinterpreted because different Arabic-speaking countries have different legal terminology for the same concepts. Tell him yes, Victoria said immediately. Tell him we'll work with his legal team to ensure precise terminology. Ethan relayed the message. The delegate nodded slowly. The Portuguese delegate spoke up in accented English. You speak Portuguese also? In Portuguese, Ethan replied, Sim, senhor, European and Brazilian variants. The financial terminology differs between them, which I believe caused some confusion earlier about payment structures. The delegate actually smiled. Finally, someone who understands. The 5 minutes had become 10, then 15. No one was checking their watch anymore. Ethan moved through the languages like water, clarifying misunderstandings, explaining cultural contexts, rebuilding bridges that had been burned by mistranslation. He wasn't just interpreting words. He was translating meaning, intent, the subtle cultural frameworks that gave language its true shape. The Japanese delegate had been silent until now. In formal Japanese, using the appropriate honorifics, Ethan addressed her directly. Suzuki-san, I noticed you haven't spoken much. In Japanese business culture, I understand that silence can indicate either agreement or strong disagreement, depending on context. If you have concerns, this is a safe space to raise them. Suzuki-san's expression showed genuine surprise. She responded in Japanese, and for the first time all day, she looked relaxed. What did she say? Victoria asked quietly. She said she's been waiting for someone to understand that her silence wasn't consent. It was concern about a manufacturing clause that no one has addressed because every interpreter kept talking over her attempts to raise it politely. Victoria leaned forward. What's the concern? For the next 30 minutes, Ethan facilitated a conversation that should have happened hours ago. Issues emerged, got discussed, got resolved. Not because everyone suddenly agreed on everything, but because they could finally understand each other. The German delegate, Weber, who'd been ready to walk out, was now engaged in an animated discussion with the French delegate about environmental standards, a conversation only possible because Ethan could navigate the technical terminology in both languages. Robert the assistant had stopped looking scandalized and started taking notes. Victoria watched it all with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Finally, nearly 2 hours after he'd knocked on that door, the energy in the room shifted. The delegates weren't adversaries anymore. They were collaborators. Not because the problems had vanished, but because they could finally see them clearly. Weber checked his watch and laughed. Actually laughed. I was supposed to call Frankfurt 45 minutes ago to kill this deal. And now? Victoria asked. Now I'm calling them to say we're moving forward. He looked at Ethan. Thanks to your janitor. Victoria's smile was sharp. Translator. Mr. Cole is our translator. The translator who cleans floors? The Portuguese delegate asked, amused. The translator who sees what others miss, Victoria corrected, which is worth considerably more. They worked until almost 7 p.m., hammering out details, clarifying language, building the framework for a deal that had been minutes from death that morning. Ethan's voice grew hoarse. His legs ached from standing. But every time someone asked a question, every time confusion threatened to creep back in, he was there, bridging languages, bridging cultures, bridging the gaps that had seemed insurmountable hours before. When the delegates finally left, handshakes all around, promises to reconvene Monday with legal teams, Ethan expected to quietly slip away, back to his cart, back to his mop, back to invisibility. "Mr. Cole," Victoria's voice stopped him at the door. "Stay, please." The room emptied. Robert closed the door behind him, leaving Ethan alone with the woman whose empire he'd just saved. She didn't speak immediately, just studied him with that same dissecting intensity. "So," she finally said, "Columbia Linguistics program, full scholarship. What happened?" Ethan hesitated. He didn't talk about this. Not with colleagues, not with neighbors, not with anyone except sometimes Lily when she asked the questions kids asked. But Victoria's expression wasn't prying. It was genuinely curious. "My wife got sick," he said simply. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. By the time they caught it, there was nothing. Anyway, I left school to take care of her. She lasted 11 months. After she died, I had a 2-year-old daughter and about $40,000 in medical bills that insurance didn't cover. Graduate stipends don't pay for that. Cleaning jobs do." "You could have gone back after." "Could I?" Ethan's laugh was tired. "With a toddler, no family support, student loans I'd already deferred twice. I needed steady income and health insurance, Miss Langford. Academia doesn't offer much of either at the graduate level." "So you became a janitor." "I became a father who could pay rent and keep his daughter fed." He met her eyes. "The janitor part was just how I did it." Silence settled between them. Outside, the city lights were beginning to sparkle against the darkening sky. From this height, the world looked clean, ordered, nothing like the messy reality of living in it. "Why didn't you say something?" Victoria asked. 3 years you've worked in this building. 3 years you've had skills we desperately needed. Why stay invisible?" "Because invisible is safe." The words came out before Ethan could stop them. "Because you don't risk what you can't afford to lose. Because I'm not the guy who used to have potential anymore. I'm the guy who keeps his head down and doesn't make waves because waves can drown you when you're already treading water." Victoria absorbed this. "What changed today?" "I don't know." Ethan rubbed his face. "Maybe I got tired of being safe. Maybe I watched you struggling with something I could fix, and staying invisible started feeling less like safety and more like cowardice." "It was brave," Victoria said quietly. "What you did. Foolish maybe, but brave." "You could still fire me." "I could," she smiled slightly. "But that would be spectacularly stupid. And whatever else I am, Mr. Cole, I'm not stupid. You just saved a $3 billion deal. What do you think I should do with you?" Ethan's heart began to pound. "I think you should let me keep my cleaning job because I need the health insurance and steady hours." "What if I offered you something better?" "Better how?" Victoria stood, walking to the window. The city spread out below her like a kingdom. "Sterling Global operates in 48 countries. We have offices on 6 continents. And apparently our communication infrastructure is catastrophically inadequate. A problem I didn't fully recognize until I watched 12 professional interpreters fail and 1 janitor succeed where they couldn't." She turned back to him. "I need someone who doesn't just translate words. I need someone who translates meaning, culture, context, the kind of understanding that prevents disasters like today." Ethan's throat went tight. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to create a position, Director of Global Communications. You'd oversee all our international correspondence, train our existing staff, develop protocols for cultural sensitivity in negotiations, real salary, full benefits, flexible hours because I understand you have a daughter." The world tilted. "That's not... People don't just..." "Just what? Create positions for qualified candidates?" Victoria's smile turned sharp. "Mr. Cole, You're the most qualified person for this job I've ever met. The fact that you're currently cleaning my floors says more about my failures than yours. Ethan's vision blurred. He blinked hard. I can't. I need to think. Think fast. I want an answer by Monday. Victoria walked to the door, then paused. And Ethan? Thank you for being brave enough to knock. She left him standing in the empty conference room, his reflection sharp in the darkened windows. Behind him, his cleaning cart sat abandoned in the hallway, evidence of who he'd been when the day started. But the man in the reflection looked different, stood different. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan Cole saw himself as more than a ghost. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Ethan, Lilybug, Daddy has something to tell you, something big. Call me when you can. The response came almost instantly. Lily, what is it? Ethan, good news, really good news, but I want to tell you when we can talk. Lily, I'm calling now. His phone lit up with her call. Ethan answered it, his voice thick. Hey, Bug. Daddy, what is it? Lily's excitement crackled through the speaker. Remember how I told you about the languages I study at night? Yeah, you know, like 1 million of them. 8, but someone important found out today, and they offered me a new job. Lily gasped. A real job? Not cleaning? The word stung, but Ethan understood. To an 8-year-old, cleaning wasn't a real job. It was just what her tired father did to keep them afloat. A real job, he confirmed. Using my languages. Helping important people talk to each other. Are you going to take it? Do you think I should? Daddy, yes. Obviously, yes. Then you won't be so tired all the time. Ethan's chest ached. I love you, Bug. I love you too. I'm telling Jessica. She hung up in a whirlwind of 8-year-old enthusiasm. Ethan stood there holding his phone, staring at the dark screen. 12 interpreters had failed today, but one single father, invisible in his cleaning uniform, had been ready. And somewhere between the mop bucket and the boardroom, Ethan Cole had stopped being invisible. The question was what happened next. The weekend passed in a blur of disbelief and terror. Ethan kept waiting for the call, the one where Victoria's assistant would laugh and say it had all been a joke, or worse, where HR would inform him his cleaning contract had been terminated for overstepping boundaries. He checked his phone compulsively, jumping every time it buzzed. But the call never came. Saturday morning, he took Lily to the park like always. She swung higher than usual, her laughter ringing out across the playground while he sat on a bench pretending to read, but actually staring at nothing, his mind replaying Friday's conference room scene on an endless loop. Daddy, you're not watching, Lily called from the top of the slide. I'm watching, Bug. He forced himself to focus, to be present. This moment, this ordinary Saturday with his daughter, this was real. The rest might evaporate like morning fog. You seem weird, Lily said later, dragging him toward the ice cream truck. Happy weird. Good weird or bad weird? Good. You smiled at breakfast. You never smile at breakfast. The observation hit harder than it should have. When had smiling become noteworthy? When had joy become so rare his daughter cataloged it like a strange phenomenon? They got chocolate cones. Lily chattered about Jessica's sleepover, about some drama in 3rd grade involving who got to be line leader. Normal things. Beautiful things. The kind of things Ethan had been too exhausted to fully appreciate for too long. If you get the new job, Lily said, chocolate smeared on her chin, will we move? The question caught him off guard. What? No, why would we move? Emily's dad got a new job and they had to move to Atlanta. She cried for like a week. We're not moving, Bug. I promise. Good. Lily licked her cone thoughtfully. I like our apartment, even if it's small. Small. That was charitable. Their place was a 1-bedroom in a building that had been vintage in the architectural sense before anyone started using that word as code for old and falling apart. Lily had the bedroom. Ethan slept on a pull-out couch that had been old when he'd gotten it from Craigslist 3 years ago. The heating was temperamental. The neighbors upstairs fought loud enough to rattle the ceiling. But the rent was manageable, and the school district was decent, and staying afloat meant making peace with small. What if we could get a bigger place? The words slipped out before Ethan could stop them. 2 bedrooms. Maybe a place with a washer and dryer so we don't have to go to the laundromat every Sunday. Lily's eyes went wide. Really? Maybe. If things work out. She threw her arms around his waist, nearly dropping her cone. This is the best day ever. Ethan held her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo mixed with chocolate ice cream. He wanted to give her everything, not spoil her. He knew the value of earning what you got, but give her stability, options. The kind of childhood where new shoes didn't mean agonizing over which bill to pay late. Sunday night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2, Ethan sat on his pull-out couch and opened his laptop. The screen's glow felt harsh in the dark apartment. He pulled up his email, hands hovering over the keyboard. Dear Ms. Langford, after careful consideration, he deleted it, started again. Victoria, I wanted to thank you for the incredible opportunity. Delete. What did you say to someone offering you a life raft when you'd been drowning for 3 years? How did you accept something that felt too good to be real without sounding desperate or ungrateful or both? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Mr. Cole, this is Robert Chen, Miss Langford's assistant. She asked me to reach out. Can you come to her office Monday at 9 a.m.? We'd like to discuss the position details, business casual attire. Ethan stared at the message. Business casual. He didn't own business casual. He owned cleaning uniforms and the single black suit he'd worn to Sarah's funeral and hadn't touched since. Ethan. I'll be there. Thank you. Robert. Excellent. Also, bring copies of your transcript from Columbia and any certifications you have. Building security will have a visitor badge ready. Visitor badge, not employee entrance. The reminder of his current status was gentle but clear. Ethan set down his phone and pressed his palms against his eyes. This was happening, really happening, and he had approximately 12 hours to figure out what business casual meant on a janitor's budget. Monday morning arrived wrapped in anxiety. Ethan had raided the thrift store Sunday afternoon, emerging with gray slacks that almost fit and a button-down shirt that was only slightly frayed at the collar. Combined with his funeral suit jacket and the one pair of decent shoes he owned, he looked not quite professional, but close enough that maybe no one would notice he was held together with clearance rack desperation. You look fancy, Daddy, Lily announced over cereal. I have an important meeting. Are you nervous? Terrified. You'll be great. She said it with the absolute certainty only children possessed. You're the smartest person I know. Ethan kissed the top of her head. Love you, Bug. Love you too. Don't forget to smile. People like it when you smile. He dropped her at school, watching until she disappeared through the double doors. Then he sat in his 15-year-old Honda, gripping the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe. You saved a $3 billion deal. You can handle one meeting. The Meridian Tower looked different when you walked through the front entrance instead of the service dock. Shinier. More intimidating. Ethan approached the security desk, acutely aware of every scuff on his shoes. I'm here to see Victoria Langford, Ethan Cole. The guard checked his computer. Ah, yes, Ms. Langford's 9 o'clock. He handed over a visitor badge. 48th floor. Elevators on your right. The elevator was glass, offering a dizzying view of the city as it climbed. Ethan had cleaned this elevator 100 times, ridden it in his gray uniform with his cart, eyes down, making himself small. Now he stood alone in business casual, watching the floors tick by, feeling like an imposter in his own skin. The 48th floor reception area was all marble and chrome and intimidation. A woman behind a curved desk looked up with a professional smile. Ethan Cole for Ms. Langford. Of course. Robert will be right with you. Can I get you coffee? Water? Water would be great. Thank you. She handed him a bottle of water that probably cost more than his entire outfit. Ethan perched on a leather chair that was more art than furniture and tried not to look as out of place as he felt. Mr. Cole! Robert appeared, crisp in a navy suit that actually fit. Good to see you. Ready? As I'll ever be. Robert's smile was kind. Don't be nervous. Ms. Langford doesn't bite. Much. The joke didn't land. Ethan's stomach was too busy performing gymnastics. Victoria's office was corner view, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city from 2 sides. The space managed to be both elegant and efficient, like its occupant. Victoria stood at her desk, focused on 3 monitors displaying what looked like international market reports. Ethan. She looked up, and her expression shifted into something almost warm. Thank you for coming. Thank you for asking me. Sit, please. She gestured to a chair across from her desk while Robert settled into another, tablet ready. Coffee? I'm good, thank you. Victoria studied him for a moment. You look uncomfortable. I've never been in this office before, at least not while anyone was in it. Ah. Understanding flickered across her face. You cleaned here. Tuesdays and Fridays, you leave coffee cups on the credenza, 3 sugars, no cream. Victoria actually laughed. Observant. Occupational hazard. Well? She leaned back in her chair. Let's talk about changing your occupation. Robert? Robert tapped his tablet. We've drawn up a proposed position, Director of Global Communications and Cultural Integration. The role would encompass oversight of all international correspondence, development of cultural competency training programs, direct interpretation services for high-level negotiations, and strategic consultation on international partnerships. Ethan's head spun. That's a lot. It's necessary, Victoria said. Friday exposed a critical vulnerability in our operations. We're doing billions in international business with inadequate cultural infrastructure. You'd be building that infrastructure from the ground up. I don't have management experience. You have something better. You have the ability to see what others miss. Skills can be taught. That kind of insight can't. She slid a folder across the desk. Proposed compensation package. Take a look. Ethan opened the folder. The number at the top of the page made his vision blur. That's... He couldn't finish the sentence. Base salary, Robert supplied. Plus performance bonuses, full benefits including family health, dental, and vision coverage, 4 weeks PTO, and flexible scheduling with the understanding that you have parental responsibilities. The salary was more than Ethan had made in the last 3 years combined. It was more than his parents had ever made in a single year. It was enough to move, to breathe, to stop drowning. This is too much, he heard himself say. Victoria's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? I'm not qualified for this salary. I didn't finish my degree. I have 3 years of cleaning experience and some online courses. This is what you're worth. Victoria's voice cut through his spiral. Ethan, you saved a deal that 12 professional interpreters with advanced degrees and decades of experience couldn't save. You did it because you understand not just language, but culture, context, nuance. Do you know what that's worth? Not this much. More. She leaned forward. I'm offering you this because you're uniquely qualified and because I'm not an idiot. If I don't make this offer attractive enough, some other company will poach you the moment they hear about Friday. So yes, this is what you're worth. The question is whether you're brave enough to believe it. The words hit like a slap. Brave enough to believe it. Ethan looked down at the contract, at the number that could change everything. I need a day, he said quietly, to think about it, to talk to my daughter. Victoria's expression softened. Of course, but Ethan, don't overthink yourself out of this. You've earned it. He left the office in a daze, Robert's business card tucked in his pocket with instructions to call with any questions. The elevator ride down felt surreal. He caught his reflection in the mirrored walls, still him, still the same tired single father in thrift store business casual. But maybe not just that anymore. His phone buzzed as he reached the lobby. Marcus. Dude, where are you? You were supposed to cover 3rd floor this morning. Marcus. His supervisor at the cleaning company. Ethan had completely forgotten to call out. Ethan. Sorry. Had an emergency. Can you cover? I'll explain later. Marcus. Again? Man, this is the 3rd time this month you've bailed. I'm going to have to write you up. Ethan. I understand. He did understand, but he also understood that getting written up didn't matter much when you were holding a contract that could pull you out of survival mode permanently. The realization settled over him like snow, quiet, transformative, a little terrifying. He was leaving. The cleaning job, the night shifts, the invisibility. He was actually leaving. Ethan drove to Lily's school, parked in the lot, and just sat there. Parents streamed by, dropping off forgotten lunches and homework. The ordinary chaos of a Monday morning. Except nothing about this Monday was ordinary. His phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello? Ethan Cole? The voice was male, unfamiliar, slightly accented. Yes? My name is David Chen. I'm the Mandarin delegate from Friday's meeting. Victoria Langford gave me your number. I hope that's all right. Of course. How can I help you? I wanted to speak with you personally. What you did Friday was exceptional. I've worked with interpreters around the world, and I've never seen anyone with your skill level. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Thank you. That means a lot. I'm calling because my company is expanding operations in North America. We need someone with your abilities. I'd like to make you an offer. The world tilted again. Mr. Chen, I appreciate that, but I've already been offered a position with Sterling Global. I know. Victoria mentioned you were in discussions, but I'd like you to hear my offer before you decide. We're prepared to exceed whatever Sterling is offering by 20%, plus relocation assistance if you're willing to split time between here and Shanghai. 20% more. Shanghai. International prestige. That's incredibly generous, Ethan managed. But I have a daughter. I can't relocate. The position would be primarily remote with quarterly travel. Your daughter could come with you, or we'd arrange care during travel periods. Ethan, you have a rare gift. Don't limit yourself because of one company's offer. After he hung up, promising to consider it but knowing he wouldn't, Ethan sat in stunned silence. 2 offers. In the span of 1 weekend, he'd gone from janitor to having multiple companies competing for him. His phone rang again. This time he recognized the number, the staffing agency that managed his cleaning contract. Mr. Cole, this is Jennifer from Atlas Staffing. We received a complaint from Sterling Global about your conduct on Friday. Something about disrupting a corporate meeting? Ethan's stomach dropped. I can explain. I'm sure you can, but I'm afraid we're going to have to terminate your contract effective immediately. We can't have our employees overstepping professional boundaries. Wait, please. Your final check will be mailed to you. Please return your uniform and badge to the office by end of week. I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. Click. Ethan stared at his phone. Fired. He'd been fired. The panic came in waves. No income, no health insurance for Lily. Rent due in 2 weeks. What had he been thinking, knocking on that door? What kind of father gambled his daughter's stability on a moment of pride? His hands shook as he dialed Robert's number. Robert Chen. Robert, it's Ethan Cole. I just got fired from my cleaning job because of Friday, and I need to know, is the Sterling offer still on the table? Because I don't have time to think anymore. I need to know if this is real. Silence. Then, hold on. Muffled conversation. Then Victoria's voice came on the line, sharp and furious. They did what? The staffing agency. They terminated my contract, said I overstepped professional boundaries. Give me 5 minutes. She hung up. Ethan sat in his car, watching parents come and go, his heart hammering against his ribs. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. His phone rang. Ethan, it's Victoria. You're reinstated. I called the agency's CEO directly, explained that you were acting at my request, and saved the company millions. They've reversed the termination and issued you 2 weeks paid leave as an apology. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. But Ethan, here's what I need from you. Stop waiting for permission to believe you deserve this. That agency fired you because they saw a janitor who got uppity. I'm offering you a position because I see a professional who saved my company. Which version do you want to be? The question hung in the air. I want to be the professional, Ethan said quietly. Then accept my offer, today. Not because you're desperate or because you got fired, but because you know you've earned it. Okay. Okay. Yes. I accept. I'll take the position. He could hear her smile through the phone. Excellent. Robert will send over the paperwork. Can you start next Monday? That gives you a week to get your affairs in order. Next Monday, yes. After she hung up, Ethan sat in the parking lot and cried. Not sad tears, not even happy tears exactly. Relief tears. The kind that came when you'd been holding your breath for so long, you'd forgotten what oxygen felt like. That afternoon, he picked up Lily from school and took her to their favorite diner, a weekly splurge they usually saved for Fridays. Why are we here on Monday? Lily asked. suspicious but delighted. Because we're celebrating. Celebrating what? I took the job, Bug. The real one. Lily's scream of joy made every head in the diner turn. She launched herself at him, nearly knocking over water glasses. Does this mean no more night shifts? No more night shifts. And you won't be so tired? Not as tired. And we can get a bigger apartment? Eventually. We'll need to save up first, but yes. Eventually. She hugged him so hard his ribs ached. I'm so proud of you, Daddy. The words nearly undid him. 8 years old, and she was proud of him. When had their roles reversed? When had he started needing her reassurance more than she needed his? I'm proud of you too, Bug. Every day. They ordered milkshakes, chocolate for her, vanilla for him. Lily chattered about her day, about the spelling test she'd aced, about how Tommy Peterson had gotten in trouble for pulling Emma's hair. Normal things. Beautiful things. But everything felt different now. Lighter. Like gravity had loosened its grip just enough to let him breathe. Daddy? Lily's voice pulled him back. Yeah, Bug. Do you think Mommy knows? About your new job? The question caught him off guard. They didn't talk about Sarah much anymore. The grief had gone from sharp to dull, from constant to occasional. But it never really left. I think she'd be really happy, Ethan said carefully. She always believed I could do more. She told me once that you were the smartest person she ever met. She said that? Yeah, I was really little, but I remember. She said you were going to change the world someday. Lily stirred her milkshake thoughtfully. I think you're doing it now. Ethan's throat tightened. I'm not changing the world, Bug. I'm just taking a new job. But you helped all those important people talk to each other. That's kind of changing the world. Out of the mouths of babes. They finished their milkshakes, walked home through the cooling evening. Their neighborhood wasn't fancy. Liquor stores and check-cashing places mixed with family-owned restaurants and laundromats. But it was home. The bodega owner waved as they passed. Mrs. Martinez from upstairs was sitting on the stoop, and she smiled at Lily. Looking happy today, mija, she said. My daddy got a new job, Lily announced proudly. That's wonderful. Congratulations, Ethan. Thank you, Mrs. Martinez. Inside their small apartment, Lily did homework at the kitchen table while Ethan made dinner, spaghetti, because it was cheap and easy, and Lily would actually eat it. The normalcy of it all felt almost surreal after the chaos of the past few days. After Lily went to bed, Ethan pulled out the contract Robert had emailed, read through every line, every clause. Benefits, salary, start date. It was all there, official and binding. He signed it electronically, his hand hovering over the submit button for a long moment. This was it. The moment everything changed. He clicked. The confirmation email arrived 30 seconds later, followed almost immediately by a text from Robert. Robert, welcome to Sterling Global. Your office will be ready Monday. Looking forward to working with you. Ethan stared at the message. Your office. Not a supply closet or a maintenance room. An office. He walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there was the Meridian Tower, its glass facade reflecting the night. Tomorrow, he'd call Marcus and formally resign from the cleaning company. He'd tell them thank you, but he was done pushing mops and being invisible. He'd tell them he was ready to be seen. His phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Ethan, this is David Chen again. I respect your decision to stay with Sterling, but if you ever change your mind, my offer stands. You have a gift. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Ethan saved the number. Not because he planned to take the offer, but because the message mattered. Someone saw his gift. Multiple someones, actually. After 3 years of being invisible, people were finally looking at him and seeing what he'd always known was there. Potential. Worth. The person he'd been before grief and survival had worn him down to the studs. He was still standing at the window when his phone rang. Late for a call, but he answered anyway. Ethan Cole. Mr. Cole, this is Amanda Price from Columbia University's Linguistics Department. I hope I'm not calling too late. No, it's fine. How can I help you? I heard about what happened at Sterling Global. Word travels fast in our field. I wanted to reach out because, well, you were one of our most promising graduate students. You left before finishing your degree, but your work was exceptional. Have you ever considered completing your graduate program? Ethan's mind reeled. It's been 3 years, and I couldn't afford. We have funding for returning students in special circumstances, and many of our courses are available online now. You could complete your degree while working. If you're interested, I'd like to discuss options. Another door opening. Another possibility. I'd be very interested, Ethan said. Thank you for reaching out. Of course. Email me this week and we'll set up a time to talk details. After she hung up, Ethan finally let himself smile. Really smile, the kind that reached his eyes and made his face ache. Finish his degree, build a career, give Lily the life she deserved. It was all suddenly, impossibly possible. He thought about Friday morning, about standing outside that conference room with a mop in his hand, about the choice to knock instead of walk away. How easily he could have stayed invisible, stayed safe. But safety, he was learning, wasn't the same as living. And for the first time since Sarah died, Ethan Cole felt alive. The week before his start date felt like living in two worlds simultaneously. In one world, Ethan was still the single father in a cramped apartment, buying generic cereal and calculating whether he could afford new sneakers for Lily before next month. In the other, he was reading through orientation materials for a position that came with an office, an assistant, and a salary that made his hands shake every time he thought about it too directly. Wednesday afternoon, Robert called with practical details that made the surreal suddenly concrete. Your office is on 46, he said. Corner view, southeast exposure. We're setting up dual monitors and IT needs to know your preferences for software. Also, Victoria wants you to attend the executive leadership meeting Friday morning, just to observe, get a feel for how things run. Friday? But I don't start until Monday. Consider it a soft start, paid, obviously. Can you make it? 10 a.m.? Ethan checked his mental calendar, which was mostly blank now that he'd resigned from the cleaning company. I can make it work. Perfect. Oh, and the building coordinator wants your suit measurements for the company card. Company card? Victoria's orders. She said, and I quote, I'm not having my director of global communications show up to international meetings looking like he raided a thrift store. Her words, not mine. Ethan laughed despite the sting. She's not wrong. Between you and me, she's been in a remarkably good mood since you accepted. I've worked for her 5 years, and I've never seen her this excited about a new hire. After they hung up, Ethan stared at his phone. Suit measurements, company card. This was really happening, and the magnitude of it kept hitting him in waves. Thursday, he took Lily shopping for new clothes, not because they desperately needed them, but because he could. Because, for the first time in 3 years, he could walk into a store without doing mental math about which bill would suffer. Can I get the ones with stars? Lily held up sneakers that lit up when you walked. Old Ethan would have steered her toward the clearance rack. New Ethan heard himself say, if you love them, absolutely. Her joy was worth more than the price tag. At the register, his card went through without drama. No declined transaction, no panicked recalculation of his checking balance. Just a simple beep and a receipt. You're smiling again, Lily observed as they walked to the car, her new sneakers flashing with each step. I'm happy, Bug. Me too. She grabbed his hand. Everything feels different now. Good different. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep in her new sneakers because she'd refused to take them off, Ethan sat at his laptop and did something he hadn't done in years. He Googled himself. The results were sparse. An old academic paper he'd co-authored as an undergrad, a mention in a Columbia newsletter from 6 years ago about scholarship recipients. Nothing recent, nothing that marked him as the person he was about to become. He wondered what would show up in a year, in 5 years. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Friday morning arrived with autumn rain, the kind that turned the city gray and made everything feel hushed. Ethan dressed in his funeral suit, still the best he owned until the company card situation materialized, and caught his reflection in the bathroom mirror. He looked nervous, hopeful, young in a way he hadn't felt in years. You've got this, he told his reflection. His reflection looked unconvinced. The executive leadership meeting was held in a conference room 2 floors above where Ethan had saved the international deal. 15 people sat around a table that could have seated 30, their presence filling the space with an energy that was equal parts brilliance and intimidation. Victoria sat at the head, commanding the room with the same controlled intensity she brought to everything. When Ethan entered, she gestured to an empty seat. Everyone, this is Ethan Cole. He'll be joining us Monday as Director of Global Communications. Ethan, welcome. Polite nods. A few curious glances. One woman, sharp suit, sharper eyes, leaned forward. You're the janitor who saved the consortium deal, she said. Not a question. Former janitor, Victoria corrected smoothly. Current linguistic savant. The woman smiled. I'm Christine Harper, CFO. I heard about what you did. Impressive. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm the one who's going to be asking you to justify your department budget. The room chuckled. Ethan managed a smile, though his stomach was performing acrobatics. The meeting itself was a masterclass in high-level corporate strategy. They discussed quarterly projections, international market vulnerabilities, upcoming mergers. The language was dense, the pace brutal. Ethan understood maybe 60%, but he took notes on everything, determined to decode the rest later. Halfway through, Victoria turned to him. Ethan, you're quiet. Thoughts on the Singapore expansion timeline? Every eye swiveled to him. Ethan's mind raced. Singapore. They'd been discussing cultural barriers to market entry, regulatory complications. I'm still getting up to speed, he said carefully. But from what I'm hearing, the timeline concerns are partly linguistic. Singapore is multilingual. English, Mandarin, Malay, Tamil. If the marketing materials and regulatory filings aren't culturally calibrated for each language group, you'll face delays beyond just bureaucratic red tape. Silence. Then Christine nodded slowly. That's exactly the issue we've been dancing around for 20 minutes. Our local consultants keep saying cultural differences without explaining what that actually means operationally. Happy to break it down once I'm officially on board, Ethan offered. Victoria's smile was small but genuine. Looking forward to it. The meeting continued, but something had shifted. People started directing questions to him. Small ones at first, then increasingly complex. By the end, Ethan felt like he'd run a marathon with his brain. When the room finally emptied, Victoria lingered. You did well, she said. I was terrified. I know, but you spoke up anyway. That's what matters. She handed him a sleek black card. Company card. Use it for anything work-related, including professional wardrobe. There's a tailor on 5th Street. Mention you're with Sterling, and they'll take care of you. Ethan stared at the card. Victoria, I don't know how to thank you. Do the job well. That's thanks enough, she paused. Also, I'm curious, have you thought about what your department will look like? Who you'll need to hire? I've started making lists. Cultural consultants for major markets, training specialists, maybe a few interpreters for routine matters so I can focus on strategic work. Good. HR will work with you on hiring. But Ethan, I want you to build something sustainable. Not just a team that supports you, but a framework that survives you. Think institutional knowledge, not individual heroics. The weight of that responsibility settled over him like a cloak. I understand. I know you do. That's why I hired you. That afternoon, Ethan went to the tailor Victoria had recommended. The shop was small, elegant, smelling of wool and cedar. An elderly man with measuring tape draped around his neck looked up from a work table. Help you? I'm with Sterling Global. Victoria Langford sent me. The man's demeanor changed instantly. Ah, yes, she called ahead. You're the new director. Come. Let's see what we're working with. An hour later, Ethan had been measured, consulted, and fitted for 3 suits, 4 dress shirts, and 2 pairs of shoes. The tailor treated each measurement like a sacred ritual, tutting occasionally about sleeve length and inseam. You'll look proper, he declared finally. Ready Monday afternoon. Ms. Langford has account here. No charge to you. Walking out, Ethan felt strange, cared for, invested in, like he mattered enough for someone to ensure he was properly equipped. It was a feeling he'd almost forgotten. Saturday, Lily had a soccer game. Ethan sat in the bleachers with other parents, half watching the game while his mind churned through orientation documents. Beside him, Karen, Jessica's mother, and the closest thing Ethan had to a friend among the school parents, nudged him. You're distracted. Sorry, big week. Jessica said Lily told her you got a new job. Congratulations. Thank you. What kind of work? Ethan hesitated. How did you explain going from janitor to director without sounding insane? Corporate communications, International stuff. Karen's eyebrows rose. Sounds impressive. And lucrative? Better than cleaning, yeah. Good for you, Ethan. Really, you've had a rough few years. You deserve something good. The sincerity in her voice made his chest tight. Thanks, Karen. Does this mean Lily won't need afternoon pickup help anymore? Actually, I was hoping you might still be willing, at least until I figure out my schedule. I can pay you now for your time. Absolutely not. Lily's a sweetheart, and Jessica loves having her around. Just maybe you could return the favor sometime when I need a break. Anytime, seriously. On the field, Lily scored a goal. She looked immediately to the bleachers, found Ethan, and her face split into a grin. He cheered loud enough to embarrass her, but she was laughing, so he counted it as a win. After the game, muddy and triumphant, Lily asked if they could get pizza. Sure, Bug. The good pizza? From Angelo's? Angelo's was sit down, not takeout, expensive by their usual standards. The good pizza, Ethan confirmed. At the restaurant, they sat in a booth by the window. Lily ordered extra cheese and talked non-stop about the game, about how she'd totally juked the other team's defender, about how coach said she was improving. Ethan listened, really listened, not distracted by worry about bills or shift schedules or whether they could afford this meal. Just present. Just dad. You're doing it again, Lily said through a mouthful of pizza. Doing what? Smiling. You've smiled more this week than like all year. I'm happy, Bug. Things are getting better. Because of the job? Partly, but also because I remembered something. What? That I'm allowed to be happy. That we both are. Lily reached across the table and grabbed his hand with her greasy fingers. Mommy would want us to be happy. The grief never fully left. It just learned to coexist with joy. Yeah, Bug, she would. Sunday evening, Ethan laid out his outfit for Monday, the funeral suit one last time until the new ones were ready. He'd polished his shoes until they gleamed, printed out his orientation packet, set 3 alarms because his anxiety wouldn't settle for less. Lily appeared in his doorway, already in pajamas. Are you nervous about tomorrow? Terrified. Want to know a secret? Always. When I'm scared about something new, I pretend I'm a character in a movie. Like, I imagine what the brave version of me would do, and then I just do that. Ethan stared at his 8-year-old daughter. When did you get so wise? I learned it from you. You pretended to be brave when Mommy died. I could tell you were scared, but you did everything anyway. His vision blurred. Come here, Bug. She climbed onto his lap like she had when she was tiny. Getting too big for it now, but he held her anyway. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. I'm proud of you too, Daddy. You're going to be amazing tomorrow. How do you know? Because you're always amazing, even when you don't believe it. Monday morning came too fast and not fast enough. Ethan woke before his alarms, showered twice, changed shirts 3 times. By the time he dropped Lily at school, his hands were shaking. Remember, she said, hugging him goodbye. You're the movie character, the brave one. Right, brave. You saved those people when all the smart interpreters couldn't. You can do anything. She skipped into school, her light-up sneakers flashing. Ethan sat in his car and tried to breathe. The Meridian Tower looked the same as always, glass and steel and impossible height. But this time, when Ethan walked through the front entrance, the security guard said, Morning, Mr. Cole. Your badge is ready. Not a visitor badge. An employee badge with his photo, his name, his new title. Director of Global Communications. The elevator ride to 46 felt like ascending into another dimension. When the doors opened, Robert was waiting. Big day, he said, grinning. Ready for the tour? Ethan's office was corner view, just as promised. Southeast exposure flooded the space with morning light. Dual monitors sat on a sleek desk. A bookshelf waited to be filled. The window overlooked the city from a height that made everything below look manageable. Your assistant starts tomorrow, Robert said. Until then, I'm your point person for logistics. Victoria wants to see you at 11 for a strategy session. HR needs you at 1 for benefits enrollment. At 3, you have a call with the Singapore team to introduce yourself. Ethan's head spun. Okay, what do I do until 11? Settle in, check your email. IT set up your accounts this morning. Oh, and these came for you. He gestured to a vase of flowers on the credenza. Ethan walked over, found a card. Welcome to the team. You've earned this. Victoria. A second arrangement sat beside it, smaller but elegant. Congratulations on your new position. Looking forward to working together. The Singapore office. A third bouquet, wildflowers in a mason jar. We're so proud of you, Ethan. You're going to change lives. Columbia Linguistics Department. Ethan sat down hard in his new chair, staring at the flowers, at the office, at the view. 3 years ago, he'd been in a hospital room watching his wife die. 2 years ago, he'd been pushing a mop through these halls. 1 week ago, he'd been invisible. Now he was here. His computer chimed. New email. He opened it. From Victoria Langford. Subject. Welcome, Ethan. By now you've seen your office. I hope it meets your expectations. I wanted to send a quick note before we meet later. What you did 2 weeks ago reminded me why I built this company, to create space for exceptional people to do exceptional work. You are exceptional, Ethan, not because you speak 8 languages, but because you saw a problem and had the courage to solve it when staying invisible would have been easier. I don't just want you to succeed here. I want you to transform how we operate globally. Build something that matters, something that lasts. I believe you can do that. Welcome aboard. V. Ethan read it twice, then a third time. Someone believed in him, really believed, not just in what he could do, but in who he could become. At 11, he walked to Victoria's office with steady steps. She looked up when he entered, and her smile was genuine. How's the office? Overwhelming, amazing, still not quite real. It will be. Sit. Let's talk strategy. For the next hour, they mapped out his first 90 days. Immediate priorities. Audit current communication protocols, identify critical gaps, begin hiring for key positions. Long-term vision. Build a comprehensive cultural competency framework. Establish regional offices in key markets. Create training programs that became industry standard. I want Sterling to be known for this, Victoria said. Not just as a company that does international business, but as one that does it right, with respect, with understanding. That's your mandate. No pressure, Ethan said dryly. She laughed. You can handle it. Question is, what do you need from me to make it happen? Honestly? Trust. Room to make mistakes while I figure this out. You have both. But Ethan, don't hide when you struggle. My door is always open. I'd rather know about problems early than discover disasters late. Understood. Good. Now the Singapore call this afternoon. It's an introduction, but also a test. They're skeptical about this new position. They think it's American corporate bloat. Prove them wrong. At 3 p.m. sharp, Ethan joined the video call. 8 faces appeared on screen, the Singapore team. A mix of ages, ethnicities, expressions ranging from curious to openly dubious. Good afternoon, Ethan began in English, then switched seamlessly to Mandarin. Or perhaps good evening would be more appropriate given your time zone. I'm Ethan Cole, and I'm honored to work with you. The shift in the room was immediate. Surprise. Attention. He continued in Mandarin, explaining his role, his vision, his understanding that cultural communication wasn't about American headquarters dictating terms, but about building genuine partnerships. One of the team members, a woman named Mei Lin, responded in rapid Mandarin, clearly testing his fluency. Ethan answered smoothly, matching her formal register, using appropriate honorifics. She smiled. Your Mandarin is excellent. Where did you study? Columbia University, initially. Then life interrupted, and I've been self-taught for the past few years. I'm hoping to learn from your team as much as you learn from me. Another team member spoke up in English. Ms. Langford mentioned you saved a major deal recently. Can you tell us about that? Ethan walked them through the consortium negotiation, being careful to emphasize not his own heroics, but the importance of understanding cultural context. He explained how mistranslation had nearly destroyed the deal, how precision in language required understanding not just words, but worldview. By the end of the call, the skepticism had transformed into cautious optimism. We look forward to working with you, Mr. Cole, Mei Lin said. It's refreshing to speak with someone from headquarters who actually understands that the world doesn't operate in English alone. After the call ended, Ethan sat back, exhausted but exhilarated. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Well done. Maylin just emailed me. She's impressed. So am I. Ethan. Thank you. I was nervous. Victoria. Being nervous means you care. Keep caring. It's your superpower. That evening, Ethan picked up Lily from Karen's house. She practically tackled him. How was it? Was it amazing? Did you have a big office? Did people listen to you? It was good, Bug. Really good. Tell me everything. Over dinner, takeout from Angelo's because he didn't have energy to cook, Ethan told her about his office, about the flowers, about the Singapore call. Lily listened with wide eyes, asking questions, demanding details. So you're really important now, she said finally. I'm the same person I was last week. No, you're not. Last week you were sad tired. Now you're happy tired. That's different. She was right. The exhaustion he felt now was satisfying, earned. Not the soul-crushing fatigue of survival, but the good tiredness of meaningful work. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ethan stood at his apartment window looking out at the city. The Meridian Tower was visible in the distance, its top floors lit against the night sky. His office was up there. His future. But down here, in this cramped apartment with the temperamental heating and the upstairs neighbors who fought, this was his foundation, the place where he'd survived, where he'd kept going when everything fell apart. He wasn't ready to leave it yet. Not because he couldn't afford better, but because he needed to remember. Needed to stay connected to the man who'd pushed a mop and studied languages in stolen moments. That man had gotten him here, and forgetting him would be betraying everything this new opportunity meant. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Mr. Cole, this is Marcus from the cleaning company. I heard about your new position. Wanted to say congratulations and that I'm sorry for being hard on you. You were always too smart for that job. Glad you finally got out. Ethan smiled, typing back. Ethan. Thanks, Marcus, and no apologies needed. That job taught me things I needed to learn. About resilience, about dignity and hard work. I'm grateful for it. Marcus. Still, you're going to do great things. I always knew it. The messages we tell ourselves about our worth. The stories others tell about us. Sometimes they align. Sometimes they don't. Learning which voice to listen to, that was the real work. Ethan pulled up his email one more time before bed. His inbox was already filling with messages. Welcome notes from colleagues. Meeting requests. Strategic documents to review. But one email stood out. From Amanda Price at Columbia. Ethan, per our conversation, I've attached information about our returning student program. Given your current position, you might qualify for corporate sponsorship as well. Many companies will fund graduate education that enhances employee value. I've also taken the liberty of reviewing your previous coursework. You were 18 credits away from your master's when you left. Most of those credits could be completed through hybrid online courses, with just occasional campus visits for seminars. You were brilliant then. I suspect you're even better now. The world needs people who understand that language is culture, and culture is everything. Let's talk soon. Amanda 18, credits. One thesis. That's all that stood between him and finishing what he'd started 6 years ago. Ethan opened a new document and started typing. Potential thesis topics. 1. Cultural linguistics in international business negotiation. 2. The economic cost of mistranslation in global markets. 3. Building sustainable cross-cultural communication frameworks. His fingers flew over the keys, ideas pouring out. Academic rigor meets real-world application. Theory informed by practice. For the first time in years, Ethan could see a future that wasn't just survival. It was growth, evolution, becoming. When he finally crawled into his pull-out couch at midnight, he was too wired to sleep. But it was a good wired, the kind that came from knowing you were exactly where you needed to be. His last thought before sleep took him was of Lily's words. You're the movie character, the brave one. Maybe she was right. Maybe bravery wasn't the absence of fear, but showing up anyway, knocking on doors, taking chances, believing you were worth the risk. And maybe, just maybe, the best was yet to come. 3 months into his new role, Ethan faced his first real crisis. It started with an email at 6 in the morning, the kind that made his stomach drop before he'd even finished reading the subject line. Urgent. Brazil partnership collapsing. Cultural incident. He opened it standing in his kitchen, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. Ethan, we have a situation. Our VP of Operations made comments during yesterday's Rio meeting that were interpreted as deeply offensive by the Brazilian team. They're threatening to withdraw from the partnership entirely. We're talking $400 million in projected revenue. I need you on a plane to Sao Paulo today. Fix this. Victoria Lily wandered out of her bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Daddy, why are you up so early? Work emergency, Bug. His mind was already racing through logistics. Flight time. Who could watch Lily? What he knew about Brazilian business culture versus what he'd need to research on the plane. Do you have to go away? The fear in her voice cut through his panic. Since Sarah's death, Lily struggled with him leaving overnight. Even sleepovers at friends' houses sometimes triggered anxiety. Just for a few days. But Karen said you can stay with her and Jessica, remember? You love staying there. I know, but Lily's eyes welled up. What if something happens to you too? Ethan set down his coffee and knelt in front of her. Hey, look at me, Bug. Nothing is going to happen. I'm going to get on a plane, talk to some people about how to communicate better, and come right back. 3 days. Maximum. Promise? I promise. And I'll call you every night before bed. Deal? She hugged him tight. Deal, but you have to bring me something back. What do you want? Surprise me, but make it good. By 10 a.m., Ethan was on a plane to Sao Paulo, his laptop open to a hastily compiled brief about what had gone wrong. The VP of Operations, a man named Gerald Crawford, had apparently made a joke during contract negotiations about Brazilian time zones and work ethic. The translator had rendered it accurately, which was the problem. What might have passed as awkward humor in an American context had landed as a devastating insult in Brazil. The Brazilian CEO, Ricardo Mendes, had walked out of the meeting. His team had followed. Now, Sterling Global was 48 hours from losing one of their biggest Latin American partnerships. Ethan's assistant, a sharp young woman named Maya, who'd started 2 weeks after him, had sent a follow-up file with everything she could find about Ricardo Mendes. Family business, 3 generations. Deep pride in Brazilian innovation and work culture. Known for cutting ties with partners who showed disrespect. This was going to be delicate. Ethan spent the 11-hour flight preparing. He reviewed Portuguese business etiquette, studied Brazilian cultural values around respect and relationship building, and drafted 3 different approaches depending on how hostile Ricardo proved to be. He also called Lily during his layover in Miami. Hi, Daddy. Are you there yet? Not yet, Bug. Still in Florida. How's Jessica's house? Good. Her mom made pancakes with chocolate chips, and we're going to watch movies later. That sounds perfect. Hey, I love you. Love you too. Be safe, okay? Always. Sao Paulo hit him like a wall of heat and noise when he stepped out of the airport. The city sprawled in every direction, massive and vibrant, and completely indifferent to his anxiety. His hotel was in the business district, sleek, modern, exactly the kind of place where deals were made and broken. He had 4 hours before his meeting with Ricardo. 4 hours to shower, change, and figure out how to save $400 million. No pressure. At 7 p.m. sharp, Ethan entered the restaurant where Ricardo had agreed to meet. Neutral ground, Ricardo had insisted. Not his office, not Sterling's, a place where they could speak frankly. Ricardo was already there, sitting at a corner table with a glass of wine and an expression that could have frozen fire. He was younger than Ethan expected, maybe 45, with silver threading through dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Cole. His English was impeccable, his tone glacial. Mr. Mendes, thank you for seeing me. I am seeing you as a courtesy to Ms. Langford, whom I respect. You have 30 minutes to convince me why I should not take my business to your competitors. Ethan sat down, meeting Ricardo's gaze directly. He'd learned in the past 3 months that apologizing from a position of weakness never worked in international business. You had to acknowledge the harm while standing firm in your worth. In Portuguese, he said, I'm not here to make excuses for what Gerald Crawford said. It was insulting, it was ignorant, and it revealed a fundamental lack of understanding about Brazilian culture and values. You had every right to walk out. Ricardo's expression flickered with surprise. You speak Portuguese. I do. And I want you to know that what Crawford said doesn't represent Sterling Global's values. It represents one man's failure, a failure we take seriously. So you've come to apologize on his behalf? No. I've come to apologize on behalf of the company that allowed someone without cultural competency to lead that negotiation. That's a systemic failure, and it's exactly why my position exists now. Ricardo studied him. Tell me about this position of yours. For the next 20 minutes, Ethan explained his role, his vision, the changes he was implementing at Sterling Global. He talked about the consortium deal, about how mistranslation had nearly destroyed it, about his commitment to ensuring that respect for cultural differences wasn't an afterthought, but a foundation. I can't undo what Crawford said, Ethan finished, but I can promise you that Sterling Global is changing. We're building systems to prevent this kind of harm, and I'm personally committed to ensuring that your team is treated with the respect you deserve. Ricardo sipped his wine, his expression unreadable. You know what offended me most about Crawford's comment? Tell me. It was not just the insult, it was the assumption that Brazil is somehow less than America, that our work culture, our values, our contributions to this partnership are subordinate, that we should be grateful Sterling Global chose us. His voice was controlled, but anger simmered beneath. My grandfather built this company from nothing. My father expanded it across South America. I have turned it into a global force. We do not need Sterling Global. Sterling Global needs us. You're absolutely right, Ethan said quietly. And Crawford's comment revealed that he didn't understand that. But I do. Victoria does. We're not looking for a subordinate partner. We're looking for a true collaboration, one where Brazilian innovation and American resources create something neither could build alone. Pretty words. How do I know they're true? Let me show you. Ethan pulled out his tablet. I spent the flight here reviewing the partnership proposal. There are 17 points where the contract language assumes American legal frameworks take precedence. I've drafted revisions that create true bilateral authority. I want your legal team to review them, push back where needed, and help us build something equitable. Ricardo took the tablet, scrolling through Ethan's notes. His expression shifted, surprise, then cautious interest. This would require significant restructuring on Sterling's side. I know, but if we're serious about partnership, we need to prove it. Not with apologies, but with action. Silence stretched between them. Outside, Sao Paulo's evening traffic hummed past in an endless stream. Finally, Ricardo set down the tablet. I will consider this, but I have conditions. Name them. Crawford is removed from any involvement with this partnership permanently. Agreed. I'll inform Victoria tonight. Second, you personally oversee the Brazilian side of operations, not a subordinate. You. Ethan's heart rate kicked up. That would mean regular travel, significant time away from Lily. But he'd promised Victoria he would build something sustainable. That required commitment. Agreed. Third, we renegotiate the timeline. Your proposal is aggressive. We need 3 additional months for proper implementation. I'll need to discuss that with our executive team, but I think we can make it work. Ricardo leaned back, and for the first time since Ethan had sat down, he smiled slightly. You are not what I expected. What did you expect? Another American executive, full of apologies but empty of understanding. Instead, I get someone who speaks my language and actually listens. He signaled the waiter. We should eat. Business discussions are better with good food. They talked for 3 more hours. Not just about the contract, but about their lives. Ricardo had 2 daughters in university. His wife ran a nonprofit focused on education in underserved communities. He loved sailing, hated golf, and believed that business without social responsibility was theft. Ethan told him about Lily, about Sarah, about cleaning floors while studying languages in the margins of exhaustion. That's a hell of a journey, Ricardo said, pouring them both another glass of wine. From janitor to director in a few months? Sometimes opportunity and preparation collide. And sometimes the universe rewards people who refuse to stay small. Ricardo raised his glass. To partnerships built on respect. They clinked glasses, and Ethan felt the crisis shift from disaster to possibility. At midnight, Ricardo dropped him at his hotel. I will have my legal team review your revisions. We'll reconvene Thursday morning. But Ethan, I want you to understand something. What's that? This partnership works only if it's truly equal. The moment I feel like we're the junior partner again, I'm out. Money isn't worth dignity. I understand. And I agree. Good. Then maybe we can build something worthwhile. Back in his hotel room, Ethan called Victoria despite the late hour. She answered on the second ring. Tell me you saved it. I think so, but we need to remove Crawford from the Brazil operation entirely. Done. He's being reassigned effective immediately. What else? Ethan walked her through the evening, through Ricardo's conditions and his own proposed contract revisions. This is good work, Victoria said when he finished, but the timeline extension will be a hard sell with the board. Then sell them on the alternative, losing $400 million because we were too impatient to do it right. She laughed. I like how you think. All right, I'll handle the board. You keep Ricardo happy. How long are you staying? Through Thursday. We have a follow-up meeting. Perfect. And Ethan, thank you for getting on a plane with 4 hours' notice and fixing something that could have destroyed us. It's my job. No, your job is managing communications. What you did today was save the company from its own arrogance. There's a difference. After she hung up, Ethan video called Lily. She answered in pajamas, Jessica visible in the background. Daddy, how's Brazil? Big and loud and beautiful. How are you, Bug? Good. We watched 3 movies and ate so much popcorn I thought I would explode. That sounds perfect. I miss you. I miss you too. But I'm okay. Karen said you'll be home soon. A Thursday night, then I'm all yours for the weekend. Promise? Promise. Love you, Bug. Love you more. She blew him a kiss and hung up, leaving Ethan alone in his hotel room 1,300 miles from home. The exhaustion hit him all at once. The flight, the stress, the high-stakes negotiation conducted in his third language. But underneath the exhaustion was satisfaction. He'd done it, stepped into a crisis and found a way through. 3 months ago, he'd been cleaning this kind of hotel room. Now he was staying in one, representing a company in a negotiation worth more than he'd earn in 10 lifetimes. The transformation still felt surreal. Thursday's meeting was held at Ricardo's office, a statement in itself. Inviting Ethan into his space meant the relationship was shifting from adversarial to collaborative. The legal team spent 4 hours picking apart Ethan's proposed revisions. There was pushback, negotiation, compromise. But it was productive. By afternoon, they had a framework both sides could accept. I'll recommend to my board that we move forward, Ricardo said as they shook hands, pending final contract approval. Same here. Thank you for giving us another chance. Thank the fact that you actually understood what the problem was. Most companies would have sent another apology and expected that to be enough. Ricardo smiled. You're welcome in Sao Paulo anytime, Ethan. My door is open. On the flight home, Ethan drafted his report for Victoria. But his mind kept drifting to something Ricardo had said during dinner Tuesday night. You know the difference between a good business person and a great one? A good one sees transactions. A great one sees relationships. Money is renewable. Trust isn't. Ethan had been so focused on language, on cultural competency, on technical precision, but Ricardo was right. The real work was building trust. Everything else was just tools for that purpose. He opened a new document and started writing. Proposal. Relationship Management Framework. Current state. Sterling Global treats international partnerships as transactions. We negotiate, sign contracts, execute plans. When problems arise, we troubleshoot tactically. Proposed state. We build relationships first, deals second. Before entering any new market, we invest time in understanding local values, building genuine connections, demonstrating respect through action, not just words. Implementation. Cultural immersion programs for executives before major negotiations. Local advisory boards in each market to guide strategy. Regular relationship maintenance, not just crisis management. Long-term thinking that prioritizes sustainability over quick wins. The proposal grew to 12 pages by the time his plane landed. He sent it to Victoria with a note. This is what I learned in Brazil. We can't just fix our language. We need to fix our approach. Her response came 20 minutes later. This is exactly the kind of thinking I hired you for. Let's discuss Monday. Welcome home. Lily was waiting at arrivals with Karen, bouncing on her toes with barely contained excitement. When she saw him, she sprinted forward and launched herself into his arms. You're back! You're back! Did you bring me something? Maybe. Ethan grinned, pulling a small wrapped box from his bag. Close your eyes. She obeyed, vibrating with anticipation. He placed the box in her hands. Okay, open. Inside was a delicate bracelet with tiny charms, a soccer ball, a book, a star. I got each charm for a reason, Ethan explained. Soccer ball because you're amazing at your games, book because you love reading, star because you light up my whole world. Lily's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect, Daddy. Thank you. She hugged him so tight he could barely breathe, and every exhausted mile of the past 3 days felt worth it. That weekend, he took her to the park, to the movies, to Angelo's for pizza. He was present in a way he'd struggled to be during the survival years, not just physically there, but mentally engaged, emotionally available. Sunday evening, as they walked home through their neighborhood, Lily slipped her hand into his. Daddy, I'm proud of you. For what, Bug? For being brave and going to Brazil, and for being really good at your job, and for still being my dad even when you have important work stuff. Ethan stopped walking, knelt down to her level. Listen to me. There's nothing more important than being your dad. The job is amazing, but you're my reason for everything, okay? Okay, she smiled. But it's still cool that you're important now. I was always important, I just have a different job. I know, but before you seemed sad all the time. Now you seem like you again, like how I remember from when Mommy was alive. The observation hit him square in the chest. She was right. Something fundamental had shifted, not just circumstances, but his sense of self. He'd rediscovered the person he'd been before grief had hollowed him out. Monday morning, Victoria called him into her office before he'd even sat down at his own desk. I read your proposal 3 times, she said without preamble. It's brilliant, and it's going to require a complete restructuring of how we approach international business. I know. That's why I wasn't sure whether to send it. Ethan, transformative ideas are supposed to be uncomfortable. If they weren't, someone would have already implemented them. She turned her monitor toward him. I forwarded your proposal to the board. They want you to present it at next month's quarterly meeting. His stomach dropped. Present to the board? Is that a problem? I've never presented to a board before. Then it's time to learn. You have 4 weeks to refine the proposal and build a compelling presentation. Think you can handle it? The old Ethan, the invisible janitor, would have panicked, would have found reasons why he wasn't qualified, wasn't ready, wasn't enough. The new Ethan heard Lily's voice in his head. You're the movie character, the brave one. I can handle it, he said. Good, because this proposal could define Sterling's international strategy for the next decade. No pressure. She smiled to show she was half joking, but only half. The next 4 weeks were the most intense of Ethan's professional life. He refined his proposal, built financial models with Christine Harper's team, gathered data on competitive advantages of relationship-focused approaches. Maya helped him create a presentation that was equal parts business strategy and cultural manifesto. He also enrolled in Amanda Price's hybrid graduate program because apparently he enjoyed being perpetually exhausted. Classes met online twice a week, with 1 weekend seminar per month on Columbia's campus. The first seminar fell on Lily's 9th birthday. I can miss it, Ethan told her over breakfast. Your birthday is more important. Daddy, no. You've been so excited about going back to school. We can celebrate Saturday instead. You sure, Bug? Totally sure. Plus, Karen said she'd take me and Jessica to the trampoline place. That's even better than hanging out with you all day. Gee, thanks, she grinned. I'm kidding. But really, go to your class. I'll be fine. The seminar was everything he'd forgotten he loved about academia. Rigorous discussion, passionate debate, the collision of theory and practice. His classmates were mostly younger, fresh from undergrad or just a few years out. But several were returning students like him, people who'd left and found their way back. During lunch break, Amanda Price pulled him aside. How are you managing? Work, parenting, coursework? That's a lot. Honestly, I have no idea. I just keep moving and hope I don't collapse. She laughed. That's called being a graduate student and a parent simultaneously. You're doing great, Ethan. Your first paper was exceptional. Really? Really. You're bringing real-world experience to academic frameworks. That's rare and valuable. Don't lose that perspective. The validation meant more than he expected. The night before his board presentation, Ethan couldn't sleep. He ran through his slides obsessively, refining transitions, strengthening arguments. At 2 a.m., he gave up and went to the kitchen for water. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, you okay?" "Just nervous about tomorrow." "The big meeting?" "Yeah." She patted over and climbed into his lap, getting too big for it, but neither of them caring. "You're going to be amazing." "How do you know?" "Because you always are, even when you don't believe it." She yawned. "Can I tell you something?" "Always. When I grow up, I want to be brave like you." Ethan's throat tightened. "Bug, you're already the bravest person I know." "Really?" "Really. You lost your mom when you were tiny, and you kept going. You help other kids when they're sad. You're kind even when people aren't kind to you. That's real bravery." She considered this. "I think bravery is just doing stuff even when you're scared." "I think you're exactly right." They sat in the quiet kitchen for a while, just breathing together. Finally, Lily yawned again. "I should go back to bed. You should too." "I will. Love you, Bug." "Love you too, Daddy. Good luck tomorrow." The boardroom on the 50th floor made the executive conference room look modest. 23 people sat around a table that could have been carved from a single tree. Victoria sat at one end, the board chair at the other. Between them were some of the most powerful business leaders in the country, and Ethan standing at the front with his presentation, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Members of the board," he began, "3 months ago, I was the janitor who cleaned this room. Today, I'm the director of global communications, asking you to fundamentally rethink how Sterling Global engages with the world." He had their attention. For the next 45 minutes, Ethan laid out his vision. He showed them the cost of cultural incompetence, not just the Brazil crisis, but a pattern of smaller failures across multiple markets. He demonstrated how relationship-focused approaches created competitive advantages their rivals couldn't match. He painted a picture of Sterling Global not just as a company that did international business, but as one that excelled at it. The questions came fast and aggressive. This would slow down our deal timeline significantly. Short term, yes. Long term, we'd waste less time fixing preventable problems. The investment required is substantial. Smaller than the revenue we lose to cultural missteps. I've included comparative analysis in Appendix C. How do we measure success? Partnership longevity, reduced contract disputes, market expansion efficiency. The metrics are in your packets. Back and forth, challenge and response. Ethan held his ground, backed by data, strengthened by experience. Finally, the board chair, a woman named Margaret Dawson, who'd built 2 Fortune 500 companies, spoke up. "Mr. Cole, I appreciate your passion, but I'm struggling with one question. You're asking us to fundamentally change our operational approach based largely on your personal experience. Why should we believe this scales beyond your individual capabilities?" It was the question Ethan had been dreading, the one that cut to the core of his uncertainty. He could have retreated to data, to safe corporate language. Instead, he told the truth. "You're right to question that," he said. 3 months ago, I was nobody. I had skills but no platform, talent but no opportunity. Victoria gave me both. And in that time, I've saved 2 major partnerships that 12 other professionals couldn't save. Not because I'm smarter, but because I was taught by necessity to see what others miss." He paused. "This approach scales because I'm building systems, not a cult of personality. I'm hiring people, creating protocols, establishing training programs. In 5 years, Sterling won't need me personally for this to work. But right now, you need someone who believes in it enough to build it. That's me." Silence filled the room. Then Margaret smiled. "That's the most honest pitch I've heard in 20 years. I move that we approve Director Cole's proposal with a 12-month pilot program and quarterly assessment." "Second," said another board member. The vote was unanimous. Victoria caught his eye across the table, and her expression said everything: pride, satisfaction, vindication. After the meeting, as board members filed out, several stopped to shake Ethan's hand. "Impressive work, young man. Looking forward to seeing what you build." That bit about being the janitor, ballsy move. But it worked. When they'd all left, Victoria walked over. "Congratulations, Director Cole. You just got 12 months and a substantial budget to prove your vision. Don't waste it." "I won't. I know you won't. That's why I bet on you. She turned to leave, then paused. Also, the board wants you at the next shareholders meeting. They think your story is compelling for investors. My story? Janitor to director in 3 months? It's the kind of narrative that shows we value talent wherever we find it. Corporate social responsibility and smart business wrapped in one. After she left, Ethan stood alone in the boardroom looking out at the city below. Somewhere down there was his old apartment, the laundromat where he spent Sunday afternoons, the school where Lily learned and grew. His phone buzzed, a text from Lily. Lily, how did it go? Ethan, really well, Bug. They said yes. Lily, I knew it. You're the best. Ethan, want to celebrate? Your choice for dinner. Lily, pizza and ice cream. And can we go to the bookstore? Ethan, all of the above. Pick you up from Karen's at 4. He pocketed his phone and took one last look around the boardroom. This was power. This was influence. This was what he'd been chasing without realizing it. Not wealth, not status, but the ability to shape things, to build something that mattered. But the real power, the thing that actually changed his life, wasn't in this room. It was waiting for him at Karen's house, probably already picking out which book she wanted, her new bracelet catching the light with every movement. That's where his victory lived, not in board approval or executive praise, but in the life he was building for his daughter, in the example he was setting, in the proof that dignity and hard work and refusing to stay invisible could actually transform everything. 12 interpreters had failed that day 3 months ago, but one single father had been ready, and he was just getting started. 1 year after knocking on that conference room door, Ethan stood in a completely different kind of room, the lobby of a community center in the neighborhood where he'd once struggled to make rent. The space smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Folding chairs sat arranged in neat rows. A whiteboard at the front read free language classes, all welcome, in English, Spanish, and Mandarin. 23 people had signed up for the first session. Ethan had expected maybe 5. Nervous? Maya appeared beside him, carrying a box of donated textbooks. Terrified. What if I'm terrible at teaching? You literally train executives for a living now. You'll be fine. That's different. Those are people who chose to be there. These are people who chose to be here too, Maya interrupted gently. They showed up on a Saturday morning because they believe you can help them. Don't overthink it. The students began filtering in. A woman in her 50s with calloused hands and nervous eyes. 2 teenagers who looked like siblings. An elderly man with a cane. A young mother with a baby strapped to her chest. Each one carrying the same expression Ethan recognized from his own mirror 3 years ago. Hope mixed with exhaustion, determination fighting against the weight of circumstances. He thought about his first night cleaning the Meridian Tower, about studying verb conjugations during his lunch break, about the thousands of small moments that had built the bridge between who he'd been and who he'd become. Good morning, he said in English, then repeated it in Spanish and Mandarin. My name is Ethan Cole, and I used to clean office buildings for a living while studying languages at night. I know what it's like to be tired, to wonder if learning something new is worth the effort when you're already drowning. I'm here to tell you it is, and I'm here to help. The woman with calloused hands raised her hand. You really used to clean buildings? For 3 years, my daughter and I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment 6 blocks from here. I know this neighborhood. I know what it costs to survive here. Something shifted in the room. Shoulders relaxed, eyes brightened. He wasn't some privileged academic slumming it for charity. He was one of them who'd found a way through. The class ran 2 hours. Ethan taught basic business English, focusing on phrases that could open doors, how to ask for opportunities, how to present yourself professionally, how to navigate interviews. He mixed in cultural context, explaining the unspoken rules that nobody tells you but everyone expects you to know. Afterward, the young mother approached him, her baby now sleeping against her shoulder. Mr. Cole, I work night shifts at a hospital, cleaning, like you used to. I keep thinking I should go back to school, get my nursing degree, but I don't know if I can manage everything. Ethan saw himself in her so clearly, it hurt. What's your name? Rosa. Rosa, can I tell you something? A year ago, I was standing where you're standing. I'd given up on school, on advancement, on everything except survival. Then someone gave me a chance I didn't think I deserved. You know what I learned? What? The degree matters less than the determination. If you want to be a nurse, start taking one class, just one. You don't have to solve the whole puzzle at once. You just have to take the next step. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I needed to hear that. After everyone left, Ethan sat alone in the empty community center, feeling something he hadn't expected, fulfillment that went deeper than any boardroom victory. He'd spent the past year building systems and frameworks at Sterling Global. Important work. Necessary work. But this, helping people who reminded him of his former self, this felt like closing a circle. His phone rang. Victoria. How was your first class? Good. Really good. How did you know about it? Maya mentioned it. I think it's excellent, by the way. Community engagement looks good for the company, and it's authentic to your story. Win-win. Ethan smiled. Even Victoria's praise came wrapped in strategic thinking. I didn't do it for the company. I know. That's why it matters. Listen, I'm calling about Tokyo. The partnership meeting is next month, and I need you there for the full week. His chest tightened. A full week meant missing Lily's school play, the one she'd been rehearsing for 2 months. Victoria, I don't know if I can. Before you say no, hear me out. Bring Lily with you. We'll cover her travel, set up tutoring so she doesn't fall behind, arrange cultural experiences she'll never forget. Make it a father-daughter trip. The meetings are daytime only. You'll have evenings and the weekend free. Ethan was silent, his mind racing through logistics and possibilities. Think about it, Victoria continued. But Ethan, this partnership is critical. The Tokyo team specifically requested you after what you built in Brazil. They trust you in a way they don't trust Sterling Global yet. I need you there. That evening, he sat Lily down and explained the situation. She listened with the serious expression she wore when weighing important decisions. Would I get to see Tokyo? She asked. The whole city, temples, gardens, the observation deck of Tokyo Tower. We'd make it an adventure. But I'd miss my play. You would, and that's not fair to you. So if you say no, I'll tell Victoria I can't go. Lily chewed her lip, thinking. Would missing this meeting be bad for your job? It wouldn't help. Then we should go. The play is just one night, but Tokyo is... it's Tokyo, Daddy. How many kids get to go to Tokyo? Are you sure? I'm sure. But you have to promise we'll do something really cool there, not just sit in a hotel while you work. I promise. We'll make it unforgettable. 3 weeks later, they landed in Tokyo at dawn. Lily pressed her face against the airplane window as the city materialized below, a sprawling tapestry of lights and life and organized chaos. It's so big, she breathed. Biggest city I've ever seen, Ethan agreed. The hotel was in Shibuya, close enough to Sterling's Tokyo office for Ethan to walk to meetings, but positioned perfectly for exploration. Their room had 2 beds and a view of the famous Scramble Crossing, where thousands of people flowed in organized waves every time the light changed. This is like living in a movie, Lily said, watching the crowds below. Ethan's meetings started Monday morning. He'd arranged for Lily to have a tutor in the hotel's business center, a young woman named Yuki who spoke perfect English and had offered to combine regular schoolwork with Japanese language basics. You're learning Japanese? Lily asked skeptically. Just some basics, numbers, greetings, polite phrases. It'll make exploring the city more fun. Fine, but after tutoring, we're doing something cool. The Tokyo partnership meeting was different from Brazil. The Japanese team valued process, precision, harmony over confrontation. Ethan had spent 2 weeks preparing, studying not just language, but the intricate dance of Japanese business etiquette. The lead negotiator, Tanaka-san, greeted him with a bow that Ethan returned at precisely the correct angle. They conducted the meeting in a mix of Japanese and English, Ethan switching languages to ensure nuance wasn't lost in translation. By day 3, they'd built the framework for a partnership that would position Sterling Global as the preferred Western partner for Japanese tech innovation. The contract language took hours to perfect, not because of disagreement, but because both sides wanted absolute precision. Cole-san, Tanaka said during a break, your understanding of our culture honors us. Many Western executives treat meetings as battles to win. You treat them as relationships to build. I learned from the best, Ethan said, thinking of Ricardo in Brazil, of Victoria's mentorship, of every failure that had taught him something vital. "Your daughter is here in Tokyo with you?" "She is. She's 9. I wanted her to experience this incredible city." Tanaka smiled. "Bring her to dinner Saturday night. My family would be honored to host you both. My daughter is 8. They might enjoy meeting." That Saturday, Ethan and Lily took a taxi to Tanaka's home in a quiet neighborhood outside the city center. The house was traditional Japanese architecture mixed with modern touches, elegant in its simplicity. Tanaka's daughter, Hana, was shy at first, but Lily's enthusiasm was infectious. Within minutes, they were showing each other photos on their phones, communicating through gesture and laughter where language failed. Over dinner, a spectacular array of dishes Tanaka's wife had prepared, Ethan watched his daughter experience the world beyond their neighborhood, beyond their struggles. She tried everything, asked questions, listened to Hana teach her Japanese words for thank you and delicious. "Your daughter is curious," Tanaka observed. "That is a gift." "She gets it from her mother," Ethan said quietly. "My wife always believed the world was bigger than our small corner of it. She would have loved seeing Lily here. She watches from somewhere, I think, and she is proud." The simple certainty in Tanaka's voice undid something in Ethan's chest. He'd spent 3 years running from grief, then a year rebuilding his life. But he'd never quite made peace with Sarah's absence, never quite believed she'd be proud of where he'd ended up. Maybe it was time to believe it. Sunday, their last day in Tokyo, Ethan kept his promise to make it unforgettable. They started at the Sensoji Temple, where Lily marveled at the massive red lantern and the fortune she drew from the wooden box. They rode the bullet train to Kamakura to see the great Buddha, Lily's eyes wide with wonder. They ended the day at Team Lab Borderless, an interactive digital art museum that felt like stepping into another dimension. "This is the best trip ever," Lily declared, exhausted and glowing, as they collapsed in their hotel room that night. "Better than Disney World?" Ethan teased. "We've never been to Disney World." "Point taken, but someday we will." "I don't need Disney World. I just need more adventures with you." She fell asleep holding the fortune from the temple, and Ethan sat by the window watching Tokyo's lights blur through sudden tears. Everything he'd built over the past year, the career, the success, the recognition, none of it meant as much as this. Giving his daughter experiences that expanded her world, being present for her in ways his own exhaustion had once prevented. The flight home was long but comfortable. Lily slept most of the way, her head on Ethan's shoulder. He worked on his laptop, drafting the implementation plan for the Tokyo partnership, but his mind kept drifting back to Tanaka's words. "She watches from somewhere, I think, and she is proud." When they landed, Karen was waiting at arrivals with Jessica, who squealed and hugged Lily while demanding to hear everything about Tokyo. "How was it?" Karen asked Ethan while the girls chattered. "Life-changing, for both of us. You look different, lighter, somehow." "I feel different. Like, I finally figured out how to be both the professional and the father without losing myself in either role." "That's the dream, isn't it? The balance." That week, Ethan submitted his 12-month review to Victoria and the board. The metrics were undeniable. Partnership retention up 43%, cultural incident reports down 78%, international revenue growth exceeding projections by 32%. He'd hired a team of 15 specialists, established offices in 5 countries, and built training programs that were being adopted by other divisions. But the numbers only told part of the story. The real story was in the emails from team members who felt empowered to speak up about cultural concerns, in the partnerships that thrived because trust had been built into their foundation, in the way Sterling Global was increasingly seen not just as an American company doing international business, but as a truly global organization. Victoria called him into her office the day after his review was submitted. "The board is extremely pleased," she said without preamble. "They want to expand your mandate, double your budget and your team size, make you vice president of global strategy and cultural integration." Ethan's stomach flipped. "Vice president? You've earned it. The question is whether you want it. The role would require more travel, more responsibility. I won't pretend it won't be demanding. Can I think about it? Of course. But Ethan, I want you to understand something. You're not the janitor anymore. You don't have to keep proving yourself. You've already proven everything. The question now is what you want to build next." That night, Ethan talked it through with Lily over pizza at Angelo's, their place for big conversations. It's more money and a fancier title, he explained, but it's also more time away from you, more pressure. I need to know how you'd feel about that. Lily was quiet for a moment, twirling pasta on her fork. Do you want the job? Part of me does. It's a chance to do even more meaningful work. Then you should take it. Just like that? Daddy, you've been happier this year than I can remember. And yeah, you travel sometimes, but you're also here when it matters. You came to my soccer games. You helped with my science project. You took me to Tokyo. She looked up at him with eyes too wise for 9 years old. Mommy wouldn't want you to be small because you're scared. She'd want you to be big. Ethan's throat tightened. When did you get so smart? I learned from the best. He accepted the promotion the next morning. 6 months later, Ethan sat on a stage at the annual Sterling Global shareholders meeting, part of a panel discussing the company's strategic vision. The audience was hundreds strong: investors, employees, industry analysts. When it was his turn to speak, he looked out at the crowd and thought about how far he'd traveled from that conference room where he'd held a mop and made a choice. 18 months ago, he began, I was the janitor who cleaned this building's executive floors. I wasn't supposed to be in the room where deals happened. I was supposed to be invisible. But invisibility is a choice society makes about who matters and who doesn't. I'm standing here today because one person, Ms. Langford, chose to see past the uniform to the person beneath, and because I chose to see past my fear to the possibility beyond. He paused, letting the words settle. Sterling Global's international success over the past year hasn't happened because we hired the right translator. It happened because we committed to a fundamental truth. Business is about relationships, and relationships require respect. Not performative respect. Real respect. The kind that shows up in how we structure contracts, how we train employees, how we engage with cultures different from our own. The framework we've built is replicable, it's sustainable, and it's already being adopted by other organizations because it works. But more than that, it's right. It's the acknowledgement that in a global economy, cultural intelligence isn't optional, it's essential. The applause was genuine, sustained. Ethan caught Victoria's eye in the front row. She nodded once, pride and vindication in a single gesture. After the meeting, a young man approached him, early 20s, nervous energy radiating off him like heat. Mr. Cole, I'm sorry to bother you, but I had to say something. No bother. What's on your mind? I'm a janitor, here, actually, third shift. And I've been taking online classes, trying to better myself, but it's hard to see the point when nobody even looks at me. Then I heard your story, and I needed to tell you that it matters, that you matter, that knowing someone like you exists makes it feel possible. Ethan felt like he'd been punched in the chest. This kid, this person society had rendered invisible the same way Ethan had once been invisible. He was standing there with hope in his eyes and fear in his voice. What's your name? Marcus. Different Marcus, not your old supervisor. Just Marcus. Marcus, listen to me. You know what the hardest part is? Not the studying or the exhaustion or the wondering if you're good enough. It's believing you deserve the chance. So let me tell you right now, you deserve it. Whatever you're working toward, you deserve the opportunity to try. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. That means everything. After Marcus left, Ethan stood in the lobby of the Meridian Tower and looked around. He'd walked these halls for 3 years pushing a cart, head down, invisible. Now he walked them as vice president, recognized and respected. But the transformation wasn't about the title. It was about the choice he'd made to knock on that door, to risk invisibility for the possibility of being seen. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Lily, saw you on the live stream. You were amazing. Also, can we get ice cream after school to celebrate? Ethan, absolutely. Proud of you for watching the whole thing. I know shareholder meetings are boring. Lily, it wasn't boring when you talked. You made people cry. I saw them. Ethan, in a good way, I hope. Lily, the best way. Love you, Daddy. Ethan, love you too, Bug. See you at 3. That evening, they sat at their favorite ice cream shop, a small place 2 blocks from their apartment. They'd moved 6 months ago to a two-bedroom in a better building, but Ethan had insisted on staying in the neighborhood. This was home. These were their people. Daddy? Lily licked chocolate off her spoon. Do you ever miss the old job, the cleaning one? Sometimes. Not the exhaustion or the struggle, but the simplicity, maybe. Knowing exactly what was expected and doing it. Do you think you were happier then? No, I was surviving then. I'm living now. There's a difference. What's the difference? Surviving is getting through each day. Living is building toward something, creating meaning, making choices instead of just reacting to circumstances. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I survived for 3 years because I had you. But I'm living now because I remembered I could be more than just your dad who kept you alive. I could be your dad who showed you that transformation is possible. You're definitely showing me that. She grinned. You went from cleaning buildings to being on TV talking to important people. That's pretty cool. You know what's cooler? You went from a scared 6-year-old who just lost her mom to a confident 9-year-old who traveled to Tokyo and made friends with someone who doesn't speak her language. We both transformed. I guess we're both pretty awesome. I guess we are. 3 months later, Ethan defended his master's thesis at Columbia. The topic, Cultural Intelligence as Economic Imperative, a framework for sustainable international business relationships. The room was full. His committee, Amanda Price, several former classmates, and in the back row, Victoria and Maya. And front row center, Lily, wearing her best dress and a smile that could light up the world. The defense was rigorous. His committee pushed back on methodology, questioned conclusions, demanded deeper analysis. But Ethan held his ground, backed by 18 months of real-world implementation and quantifiable results. When it was over, the committee chair smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Cole. Your thesis is approved. You've earned your master's degree. Lily jumped out of her seat and ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Bug. All those nights I was studying, you were being patient and understanding. This is our degree. Victoria approached, offering her hand. Impressive work, Ethan. Both the thesis and the defense. Thank you for being here. It means a lot. Where else would I be? You've transformed my company, and you did it while finishing a graduate degree and raising a daughter. That's the kind of determination that deserves to be witnessed. That night, Ethan hung his diploma on the wall of their apartment, right next to Lily's artwork and her soccer team photo. The piece of paper represented 6 years of interrupted dreams finally completed. But more than that, it represented the proof that giving up wasn't permanent, that you could lose your path and find it again. That transformation wasn't a straight line, but a messy, beautiful journey. 2 years after knocking on that conference room door, Ethan stood in a different community center in a different neighborhood, watching his free language program expand to its 5th location. What had started with 23 students had grown to over 200 across the city. Corporate sponsors had emerged. Other companies had started similar programs, citing Sterling Global's model. Rosa, the young mother from that first class, had just completed her nursing degree. She'd sent Ethan an invitation to her graduation, which sat on his desk like a trophy. You started something, Maya said, standing beside him as students filtered in for Saturday's session. Something that's going to outlive all of us. That's the point, isn't it? Build something bigger than yourself. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Ethan Cole. Mr. Cole, this is Jennifer Morrison from the New York Times. I'm writing a feature about corporate social responsibility programs that actually work, and your language initiative keeps coming up in my research. Would you be willing to be interviewed? Ethan's first instinct was to say no. He didn't need the attention. But then he thought about Marcus, both the Marcus who'd been his supervisor and the young janitor at the shareholders' meeting, about all the invisible people grinding through night shifts and stolen moments of study. I'll do it, he said. But on one condition. The focus isn't on me. It's on the people these programs serve. They're the real story. Fair enough? When can we meet? The article ran 6 weeks later on the front page of the Sunday Business section. From Invisible to Indispensable, How One Company's Janitor Became Its Global Strategy Chief, read the headline. The photo showed Ethan teaching a community class, surrounded by students of all ages. The article told his story, the grief, the struggle, the moment he knocked on that door. But it also profiled Rosa and 3 other students whose lives had changed through the program. It examined Sterling Global's transformation from a company that overlooked talent to one that actively cultivated it. The response was overwhelming. Interview requests, speaking invitations, job offers from competitors that Ethan politely declined. Most meaningful were the emails from people around the country, janitors, security guards, food service workers, all saying the same thing: "Thank you for proving we matter." That Sunday, Ethan and Lily lay on their living room floor reading the article together. "You're famous now," Lily observed. "I'm not famous. I'm just someone who got lucky and didn't waste the opportunity." "Daddy, it wasn't luck. It was you being brave enough to knock." She was right. Luck had played a role. Victoria being desperate enough to listen, the timing being perfect, the stars aligning in ways they rarely did. But the knock itself? That had been choice, courage. The decision to risk everything for the possibility of something better. 5 years after that conference room door, Ethan stood in a completely different kind of room, the hospital where Sarah had died. He'd avoided this place for 7 years. The memories were too sharp, too painful. But Lily was 12 now, asking questions about her mother that deserved answers rooted in reality, not sanitized nostalgia. They stood in front of the cancer center, Lily's hand tight in his. "This is where Mommy was?" she asked quietly. "This is where we said goodbye to her. Do you think she'd be proud of us?" Ethan looked at his daughter, almost a teenager now, brilliant and brave and kind in ways that took his breath away. "I think she'd be overwhelmed with pride. You're everything she hoped you'd be. What about you? Do you think she'd be proud of you?" He thought about the man he'd been 7 years ago, broken, grieving, convinced his best days were behind him. Then he thought about who he'd become. Not perfect, not without struggles, but whole in a way he'd thought impossible. "Yeah, Bug. I think she'd be proud. I think she'd tell me I did the hard thing, that I kept going when stopping would have been easier, that I raised you to be brave and curious and unwilling to settle for invisible. That's what you taught me, that invisible is a choice." They walked through the hospital garden, where Sarah had spent her final days when she could still move. Lily asked questions about her mother's last weeks, about what she'd said, about whether she'd been scared. Ethan answered honestly, not brutally, but truthfully, because Lily deserved to know her mother had been human, afraid but brave, sad but hopeful, dying but still fighting to make every remaining moment matter. "She made me promise something," Ethan said as they sat on a bench overlooking the garden. "Right at the end." "What?" "That I wouldn't let grief make me small, that I'd remember who I was before the cancer tried to define us, that I'd show you what transformation looks like even when it seems impossible." "Did you keep your promise?" "I think so. It took me a while. 3 years of just surviving. But then I remembered who I used to be and decided to find that person again. Not the exact same person. You can't go back. But a version that honored what she believed I could be." Lily leaned against his shoulder. "I'm glad you knocked on that door." "Me too, Bug. Me too." 10 years after that conference room door, Ethan stepped down from his role as Vice President of Global Strategy. Not because he'd failed or burned out, but because he'd built something sustainable. His team of 75 operated across 12 countries. His frameworks had been adopted by Fortune 500 companies worldwide. His community language program served over 1,000 students annually. He was ready for the next chapter. The farewell party was held in the same conference room where his journey had begun. The symmetry wasn't lost on anyone. Victoria gave a speech that made Ethan's eyes sting. 10 years ago, I was about to lose everything because I'd built a company that valued credentials over competence, titles over talent. Then a janitor knocked on this door and reminded me that brilliance doesn't announce itself with degrees. It shows up with mops and courage. Ethan didn't just save a deal that day. He saved this company's soul. After the speeches and the toasts and the heartfelt goodbyes, Ethan stood alone in the empty conference room. Through the glass walls, he could see the city lights, the same view he'd had a decade ago, but everything was different now. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily, now 17 and choosing colleges. "Lily, how was the party?" "Ethan, Emotional, good. Ready to be done, though. Lily, what are you going to do now that you're retired at 45? Ethan, I'm not retired. I'm redirecting. Lily, to what? Ethan, teaching, full-time. Columbia offered me a position in their linguistics department. Lily, Daddy, that's amazing. Professor Cole has a nice ring to it. Ethan, doesn't it? Plus, I can finally use that doctorate I've been working on. Lily, Mom would be so proud. Ethan, yeah, I think she would. 2 years later, Professor Ethan Cole stood in front of a lecture hall full of graduate students at Columbia University. The same halls where he'd once studied, where his dreams had been interrupted, where he thought his academic career had ended before it began. Welcome to Cultural Linguistics in Global Context, he began. This course examines how language shapes business, how culture defines communication, and how understanding both can transform not just careers but lives. I know this because it transformed mine. He told them his story, not to brag, but to illustrate. The janitor who became a VP, the widowed father who finished his education while raising a daughter alone. The invisible man who chose to knock. The lesson isn't that everyone should quit their day job and chase impossible dreams, he said. The lesson is that your circumstances don't define your ceiling. They're just your current chapter. And chapters end, new ones begin. The question is whether you're brave enough to turn the page. After class, a student approached him, a young woman with tired eyes and determined shoulders. Professor Cole? I work night shift at a warehouse to pay tuition. Your story, it made me feel less alone. Ethan smiled. What's your name? Sarah. The universe had a sense of poetry. Sarah, can I tell you something? Right now feels impossible. The exhaustion, the juggling, the wondering if you can sustain it. But here's what I learned. The impossible becomes possible one choice at a time, one knocked door, one brave moment. Keep going. You're exactly where you need to be. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I needed that. After she left, Ethan sat in his office, the same building where he'd once been a student, now his as faculty. His diploma hung on the wall beside photos of Lily at various ages. His published papers were shelved beside her artwork from elementary school. The life he'd built was messy and beautiful and exactly right. That evening, he met Lily for dinner at Angelo's. She was home from college for the weekend, full of stories about her international relations program and the semester abroad she was planning. Tokyo again? Ethan asked. Maybe. Or maybe Brazil. I've been talking to some students from Sao Paulo, and they make it sound incredible. It is. Ricardo's daughters would love to meet you. You still talk to him? Every few months, that partnership we built? It's still thriving. Relationships outlast transactions. Lily smiled. You sound like a professor. I am a professor. Weird. I remember when you were just my dad who cleaned buildings. I was never just anything, Bug. Neither are you. That's the whole point. They ate pizza and talked about her classes, her friends, her future. She was confident in a way Ethan had never been at 19. Maybe that was his greatest achievement, raising a daughter who knew her worth, who'd watched him transform and understood that limitations were often just stories we told ourselves. Daddy, Lily said as they were leaving, do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't knocked that day? Sometimes, but not with regret. More with gratitude that I did. Do you think life is random, or do you think some things are meant to happen? I think life is mostly random chaos, but every now and then we get a moment where choice and circumstance align. What we do in those moments defines everything that comes after. That's very professor of you. That's very daughter of mine to point it out. They walked to their cars. She had one now, a used Honda she'd bought with money from her part-time job. His was newer, nicer, but he'd kept it modest. Some habits from the survival years had stuck, and he was okay with that. They reminded him where he'd come from. Love you, Daddy. See you tomorrow? Brunch at our place. Don't be late. When am I ever late? Literally always. She laughed and drove off, and Ethan stood in the parking lot watching her taillights disappear. This was it. This was the victory. Not the career success or the recognition or the transformation from janitor to professor. The victory was in raising a daughter who believed transformation was possible because she'd watched her father live it. Who knew that invisible was a choice and that bravery was just showing up even when you were terrified? 15 years after knocking on that conference room door, Ethan received an email that made him laugh out loud. Dear Professor Cole, I'm writing on behalf of Sterling Global Industries. We'd like to commission you to develop a comprehensive training program for our executive team on cultural intelligence in international business. We've heard excellent things about your work and believe you'd be the perfect fit. Please let us know your availability and rates. Sincerely, Marcus Chen, Director of Global Communications. Marcus. Young Marcus from the shareholders' meeting had grown up, worked his way through college, and now held Ethan's old position. The circle was complete. Ethan replied immediately. Marcus, I'd be honored. Let's discuss details. Also, congratulations on the position. You've earned it. One question, do they still let you use the service elevator or do you have to take the executive one now? Best, Ethan. The response came within minutes. Professor Cole, they gave me a corner office and told me to use the executive elevator. But sometimes, late at night when I'm working alone, I take the service elevator just to remember where I started. Thank you for showing me it was possible. Marcus. 20 years after knocking on that conference room door, Ethan stood in yet another room, this one at Lily's wedding. She'd married a kind man she'd met during her semester in Tokyo, someone who understood that she came from a father who'd shown her the world and taught her that transformation was always possible. During the father-daughter dance, Lily whispered, "Thank you." For what? For being brave enough to knock. For showing me that one choice can change everything. For being exactly the dad I needed. Ethan's vision blurred. You made it easy. You were always worth being brave for. We both were, Daddy. We both were. The music swelled, and they danced, and Ethan thought about the man he'd been 20 years ago, standing outside that conference room with a mop in his hands and terror in his heart, making a choice that seemed small but turned out to be everything. 12 interpreters had failed that day, but one single father, invisible in his cleaning uniform, exhausted from survival, terrified of risk, had been brave enough to knock. And from that single moment of courage, everything had changed, not just for him, not just for Lily, but for everyone who'd heard the story and realized that invisible was a choice, that transformation was possible, that dignity lived in every person regardless of their title or uniform or circumstances. The dance ended. Lily hugged him tight. I love you, Daddy. Thank you for everything. Love you too, Bug. Always. She went back to her new husband, to her new life, to all the possibilities that lay ahead. And Ethan stood on the edge of the dance floor, watching his daughter shine, knowing that he'd done the one thing that mattered most. He'd shown up. He'd been brave. He'd knocked. And he'd never let anyone, including himself, make him invisible again.